8:32. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Ellie and Martin.
Let's go through some of those headlines in the papers this morning. Joining us to do just that is journalist and author Ella Whelan and the broadcaster Pete Price. Good morning to you both. It's been great to have you with us this morning. Ella, let's start with you, shall we? And this is a story in The Guardian from Sadiq Khan, who says he's been left with death threats and PTSD.
Yes, so in an interview he's described the kind of things that he says he's had to deal with over the last few years, whether it's the tragedy of Grenfell, the kind of what he calls post-traumatic stress of the pandemic, and he says that he gets a significant number of death threats and things like that. And he says that has all contributed to what him and his doctor have described as a cumulative PTSD. So he's quite quick to say it's not anything like PTSD that, I don't know, people who have served in wars or refugees or something might suffer, but that it's a kind of a cumulative effect. And I don't know if you can tell watching at home, there's a slight tinge of cynicism in my voice, which is that I don't think, no one wants to revel in anyone being unwell. But the interview also talks about how Khan wants to seek a third term in office, that he actually says that he wants to serve for 6 terms because he has a very large, he's got a kind of grand plan to completely overturn, for example, the way in which cars can travel in London. He has plans to, he's already expanded the ULEZ. He wants to do some quite significant things in relation to London transport, and he's come under quite a lot of criticism for that. So you do wonder if this is one of the kind of things that politicians do sometimes do, which is when they're under heavy criticism, they play the victim card. And I know that sounds very uncharitable of me, but
well, I mean, they also reach out to a sympathetic newspaper and have a fawning cover story. Undeniably, politics is a brutal place. Having been to the European Union, I've got to say I've never met a politician as unpopular as Sadiq Khan on his own turf. And I think what's happened here with ULEZ, as you mentioned, he's overreached. He's dragging in £500 million extra of tax per year. It's hammering the poorest motorists. There's been a massive backlash, and suddenly Sadiq is crying about it. Is that unfair, Pete?
Every time I come to GBNEWS to do the breakfast papers, every single taxi driver I've spoken to starts talking about him.
Oh, really?
And what do they say? What do they tell you?
Dreadful. Couldn't repeat it. I couldn't repeat it. People are very, very angry about him, very angry. And it's starting to trickle up north. People are saying, what's going on?
To be fair to Sadiq Khan, though, I mean, he's talking about death threats and the mental trauma that he suffered at the hands of his role. You can understand that there's a lot on his plate, isn't there? He's got a lot to deal with, especially, in the wake of Grenfell and terror attacks and things like that. And on top of all of that, there's criticism, isn't there? I mean, he's open to that with his role. It is a lot. For one person.
Of course, and I don't think anyone sensible would poo-poo the idea that politicians don't have it particularly hard. I mean, you've got but also the reason why you've got it hard is because you've got a huge amount of power. And unfortunately, Sadiq Khan has used, in relation to, I'm very uncomfortable sort of talking about your personal trauma in relation to Grenfell. I mean, that doesn't sit quite right with me. I don't think he particularly suffered as much as, certainly not in comparison to anyone who was related to anyone who was involved in that tragedy. But that aside, I mean, there has been a scandal semi-revealed that the Mayor's office has in their consultations around ULEZ basically sort of fudged a lot of the results. He's pushed forward with putting in low traffic zones and into boroughs where there is literally no transport. This is at the same time that bus and train fares are going up under TfL. So, I mean, call me a cynic, but I'm not sure that we're supposed to have a huge amount of sympathy for someone who is not only, the stresses of the job is an important factor, but if you're not doing the job well, which I think a lot of Londoners think Khan isn't, then it's a problem. Though, with the proviso, and having said that London is also full of a lot of Green fanatics, and he does get voted in. I'm not trying to pretend he's not popular in that way.
If the job is so stressful, you get one chance in this life, leave, get another job.
Yeah, and it's interesting, he said he wants to stand for 6 terms, so it can't be that stressful if he wants 3 more rolls of the dice, Pete. And let's move on to one of your stories. Another concern teachers are having, we talked about AI earlier, now it's children as young as 11 are vaping.
Yep, pupils are being warned and they're going to be teaching them about the addiction of vaping. It seems to be a major problem that's sneaking underneath the radar. A third of under 18s have been exposed to vaping promotion online. So it's sneaking in. School children are not realizing how sort of serious this is.
Yeah.
About 40 countries worldwide have banned vaping from the country. I'm from the days of smoking, and we didn't know about smoking. And of course, then we realized how bad it is. But I think there should be a lesson once a week, anything, about the whole thing. Vaping, drugs, everything, a world lesson of real life, and telling you about porn on your telephones, about a lesson in life, because our children are being bombarded by these things, and it's sad about it.
Yeah, it is. And do you think with vaping, it needs to be marketed differently? Because when you see the vapes in the shops now, they're all brightly coloured, fluorescent pink and green
and the shops
and blue.
Are very
lovely
exciting.
flavours that smell great.
Excuse me, where's the money coming from?
Yeah.
Kids, where is the money coming from to pay for this?
Yeah.
Well, probably
How much is a vape?
pocket money.
Well,
Should give them pocket money.
£5, here we are. Shops are selling devices to young people for around £5.
Yes, it's cheap.
The difficult thing with vaping is that it is pretty much the single most important factor in getting adults to give up smoking. It is the best way for smokers to be able to transition to become non-smokers, is to go via the vape. We know that, and the figures speak for themselves. So in one sense, I'm very pro-vaping because it's a good route out of smoking. But
if vaping was brought in correctly and medically, and the proof is there, as a gateway out of smoking, the counter-argument is it a gateway into smoking for young people?
Well, this is it. It's bizarre that you can now buy vapes that don't have nicotine at all in them. It's just sort of flavoured. I suppose it's akin to a shisha pipe. It's flavoured air, which then it becomes a kind of collectible thing, or the sort of nicely coloured vapes. But all of this comes back down to, I think Pete touched on it, which is a bit of adult authority, which is to say, your mum or your teacher, whoever, just says you're not allowed to do this, and if you get caught with it, you're going to get,
My mother belted me when she found out I was smoking. I smoked for about 2 weeks, and she actually belted me. I know it's illegal to belt you, but I got a slap.
Yeah, well, many children, especially as young as 11, they probably wouldn't understand the nicotine levels of something like vaping. And where it's been marketed as a healthier alternative to smoking, they probably don't actually appreciate the health implications of vaping.
Another story related in a way, Ella, moving on to yours now, the Times, page 4. Parents should avoid telling children they need to go on a diet.
Yes, this is kind of, I think this tells you a lot about the current trends in parenting and the way we're meant to relate to our kids, which is that some advice given by a team from the University of Bath and the British Dietetic Association says that instead of saying, you're getting a bit pudgy, kid, let's have a run around the park, or instead of using language like, I need to control my weight, I need to eat less, I'm getting a bit fat, they say that the language we use around children is really important, which is, instead we should be saying, I want to get healthy. So the message is that if you use words like fat around kids, they'll develop a complex. I think that's kind of not giving kids credit enough for how resilient they are. That actually a lot of, you can have honest conversations with your children and say, your jeans are a bit tight, let's go play some football. But it's also, it's hard for parents to have any kind of say in how their kids are having a relationship with food. When you have things like, I was at a pizza restaurant last night, and the calories are all over the menu and things like that, which just is the most depressing thing. I mean, way to give teenagers a complex.
So what are you supposed to say to them? What are you supposed to say to them instead of fat?
I think, you're meant to say, I would like to become more healthy, or things like that. And it's just, As a matter of fact, the only thing that really works with kids is straight talking.
Yes.
If no kid is particularly interested in getting healthy, but they might be interested if you put things in plain words and say you're not going to feel good about yourself, or you're getting a bit fat or something. I think it's just all of this. The reason why I said it tells you a lot about parenting is because we are now being given instructions on how to relate to our kids on the most minute level. How to have a conversation about what you eat at home. And even, there's UCL, another group of researchers, was reported in the Times, are saying that we need to have lessons for parents in how to address nutrition in their kids.
That's really interesting.
That's absolutely dreadful. It's what you put in your mouth. That's what keeps you slim. It's if you stop putting that in your mouth. Watch what you're eating.
And it's interesting. You're right,
not
because
sensible.
Back to that pocket money conversation. I see kids at my boys' school, and the kids from the poorer backgrounds. Every day, those kids are having chicken from the chicken shops. It's cheap. It's like £1.99 for a box of chicken and chips, and that's their daily meal. The parents don't want to cook, so unhealthy shops set up near schools because that's their captive market. There's no planning on that. But then, as a libertarian, as a free marketeer, should we be legislating? I mean, we're talking about calories on menus. We're talking about closing down shops near schools. I mean, it's nanny state.
Yeah, but you're saying there about going and getting cheap food in the shops, cheap chicken. The amount of people that get Deliveroo and all those, and it's garbage they're getting delivered to their house, and they're paying that extra money to get the garbage delivered. So go out and buy proper food, buy a slow cooker and put some stew in it. It's easy. If you can't cook, throw it all in and cook it slowly, and it's good food for you.
I'm getting hungry now, Pete.
Yeah, well, maybe that needs to be in your life lessons. People need to do some nutrition lessons as well for kids.
I think we should.
I think even things like a slow cooker, I don't think kids would know how to make a stew.
But then we also have to be realistic and remember when we were all teenagers. And when I was a teenager, I was not thinking about what I was going to put in my slow cooker. I wanted to save as much money of whatever pocket money or whatever I got my hands on for fun things. And lunch or whatever was you just eat what you can at that time. You don't actually put a huge amount of thought into it. And actually, one of the things that should be a kind of a worry about with kids in relation to the kind of calories on menus and stuff like that is if you get kids to obsess about food at this level, then you are going to see, and we are actually seeing, a rise in eating disorders and things like that, which is the other end of the spectrum. You want to just not worry too much about food when you're a kid, but when you hit 20, it all starts going downhill, and you have to watch what you eat. By the way,
well, not quite so pessimistic. Wait till you get to 50.
You can pretty much put anything, as long as you're staying a bit active, you can have the chicken and chips because
people are active because sitting in the room with their phones and their computers.
We sound very old and tired.
But unfortunately, that's what they're doing.
Now, Pete, I want to get over to your final story, because you may have noticed Pete's a Scouser. There's a story that's going to be here, Daily Mirror, and that is rags to riches businessman Tom Morris has been named the wealthiest Liverpudlian in history.
In history, yeah. And he's a great guy. He won't give interviews. You won't give interviews. I've asked 3 times for an interview. He won't give interviews because he's publicity shy, which is great. He started off as 21. He's absolutely brilliant because he does so much for charity.
How did he make his money?
So much. Home and Bargains. Amazing. And he's got now, how many is it? It's about 550 odd shops.
Wow.
But he started at 21. And they're tremendous shops. But this man is just one of the lads. He's made his money worth 3.4 billion, apparently, according to the rich list, and done it all himself. But he gives so much back, does so much behind the scenes. And never boasts about it.
If you're listening,
I'm boasting for him.
If you're listening out there, Tom Morris, that was a blatant plea for a 4th attempt.
Interview, please.
For an interview.
Interview, please.
For Pete Price. Here we go, mate. Hope something comes of that.
Brilliant. Ella, Pete, really, really good to have you this morning. Good to see you. Thank you so much.